I've been thinking for a while now that it's time I did another Pokemon run. After Scarlet and Violet, and then my personal favorites X and Y, I had to stop and think about what would be a good subject to test out this rule set that I've been working on. As you can see, I settled on the Let's Go games, for a number of reasons. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee have never been all that highly regarded by the community. They're seen, essentially, as baby's first Pokemon, designed to get Pokemon Go players into the mainline series and thus simplified to an embarrassing degree. That's the conventional wisdom anyway. I wanted to check that out for myself as part of my own look into how we perceive the difficulty of these games, and I figured that there'd be no way to do that in this case than with a starter solo. The starters of the Let's Go games are easy to point to when you're highlighting how much the game has been dumbed down for less experienced audiences. This Pikachu and Eevee may not be able to evolve, but they have increased base stats compared to others of their species, as well as guaranteed perfect IVs. They also have improved movesets, and even better, access to a diverse array of tutor moves that can be switched between at will just by visiting conveniently located NPCs. Eevee in particular is fortunate in this regard, with 8 tutor moves corresponding to the types of its evolutions. All of this together suggests that soloing the game with Eevee will be an absolute cakewalk, even when taking into account my own Nugget Bridge rule set. The details are down into the description, but the quick version is that I'm not allowed to fight any wild battles or use any items that boost experience or EVs, which in this game means anything from the candy jar. I'm also banning items in battle unless absolutely necessary, because that's fairly standard. Unfortunately, I can't exactly follow the rule about wild battles in the Let's Go games, because the gyms now have requirements to enter them. Pewter Gym requires you to catch a grass type before you can enter, while later on, Fuchsia Gym requires you to have registered at least 50 Pokemon in your dex, which will obviously necessitate some catching. There's also one more issue with that. Both of the starters learn Double Kick at low levels, which was almost certainly added to their moveset so that they wouldn't be completely worthless against Brock. Eevee learns the move at level 10. If you've watched any solo runs of the older Kanto games, or done any such runs yourself, you'd probably think that hitting level 10 before Brock wouldn't be that big a deal, even without wild battles. However, that's not the case in Let's Go, because in modern Pokemon the experience formula has been modified so that you gain less experience when you're at a higher level than the Pokemon you're fighting. Even if you were to fight every trainer available before Brock, including this trivial optional battle against the rival on Route 22, you won't make it to level 10. And there's no way you're beating Brock with no items while underleveled and using only normal moves. Just look at how awful of a time Eevee has against the gym trainer's Geodudes. Of course, since you have to do some catching anyway, the best compromise would be to get some of that out of the way in the early game. I restricted myself to catching one of each type of base form Pokemon on each route, excluding rare spawns. Thanks to the party-wide experience share feature, I can then rotate all those catches in and out of my party to gain experience and gradually evolve them, adding to my dex total for later. If I do that, Eevee will just barely make it to level 10 after fighting the second trainer in the gym, gaining Double Kick just before the Brock battle. So how does Eevee fare against Brock with Double Kick? It outspeeds both of his Pokemon, but it'll take a fair amount of damage. Double Kick may be super effective, but it's still hitting them on their stronger defensive stat. Geodude takes 2 hits, or 4 depending on how you're counting, while Onix takes 1 extra turn of Double Kick to go down. With the first gym behind us though, we can grab the TM for Headbutt for a useful stab upgrade, and head on to Mount Moon. Inside, you face Jessie and James for the first time, and unlike in Pokemon Yellow, this is a double battle. I've got a bunch of Pokemon in the back who can serve as placeholders though, and even when it's effectively a 2-on-1, Eevee does alright. Headbutt cleanly 2-hit KOs both Ekans and Coughing, and might even cause a lucky flinch or two. The real fun begins once I get to Cerulean, though, because it's here that the first special tutor moves become available. Eevee gains access to water, electric, and fire moves, and those newfound coverage options are going to come in handy right away. The nearby rival battle is a joke. Everything here is a one-shot, with Buzzy Buzz for Pidgey, Sizzly Slide for Oddish, and Headbutt for Pikachu. The biggest problem with these tutor moves is they all have really dumb names. Anyway, one trip to Bill's house later, and we're ready to take on the second gym. Misty can't stand up to Buzzy Buzz. Her Psyduck is a one-shot, and while Starmie outspeeds and can survive one hit, Buzzy Buzz, always paralyzing, ensures that it'll still only get one attack off. Moving right along now, down to Vermilion, and the rival battle on the SS Anne. Even at higher levels, and with Pidgey evolved into Pidgeotto, this is still a clean set of one-hit KOs. Eevee even has a super effective option for Pikachu now, courtesy of the Dig TM found where it always is in the Kanto games. Out on the docks, you'll run into an Alola cameo as well. Mina's fairy types are some of the only opponents in the game that Eevee doesn't have a super effective answer for, but with the two of them only having Double Slap and Psywave for attacking moves, they're more of a mild nuisance than an actual threat. That's not the case though with Lieutenant Surge. Voltorb outspeeds and isn't a one-shot with Dig, so I led with Bouncy Bubble to heal some of the damage from Thunderbolt. Magnemite is outsped in one-shot, no surprise there, but Raichu takes 2 hits. This is about the time that I began to notice potential problems going forward. Eevee may have inflated stats and a move for almost every situation, but it's still an unevolved Pokemon using non-stab moves, and even with fighting every trainer available, it's not getting significantly overleveled. That doesn't matter too much, however, against the rival. Pidgeotto and the now evolved Raichu are one-hit KO'd like last time, although Sizzly Slide isn't a one-shot on Gloom. I'm glad it didn't go for Sleep Powder there, that could have been a pain. In Celadon, Eevee can pick up another pair of tutor moves, one of which will come in handy right away. There's a series of major battles inside the nearby Rocket hideout, starting with Jessie and James. Their Pokemon are evolved now, but the new Psychic move Glitzy Glow two-shots both Arbok and Weezing while also setting up a light screen. That second part is extra useful for dealing with Weezing, as its only attacking move is special. Archer is up next, although he's only slightly more threatening than the generic Rockets, and uses similar Pokemon. Giovanni, on the other hand, presents more of a challenge. His Persian can take several hits while outspeeding and dealing significant damage with Slash, but fortunately Eevee has the moves to burn it and then outlast it by restoring its own HP. Rhyhorn, unsurprisingly, falls immediately to Bouncy Bubble. It's time now for another gym battle. You'd think that Erica would be a sweep with Sizzly Slide, but I chose to lead with Glitzy Glow to again take advantage of its light screen effect. The Let's Go games buff Mega Drain to 75 base power, so that damage reduction is essential to allow Eevee to survive and keep ahead of Erica's Pokemon healing. Both Tangela and Vileplume take 2 hits, while Weepinbell goes down in 1. Still not too bad, all things considered. After finishing up everything in Celadon comes another Jessie and James battle in Lavender Tower, but I barely even feel the need to commentate this one. It's almost identical to the last battle, just at slightly higher levels. Speaking of levels, though, after this, a ton of trainers become available along the long roads down to Fuchsia. Eevee gained more than 10 levels fighting all of them, making it to level 49, which still isn't that much higher than Koga's team, especially if you compare it to the levels you can reach at this point while soloing in Gens 1 or 3. The battle against Koga is fairly interesting too. Of course, Glitzy Glow hits everything for super effective damage, but Koga's Pokemon are pretty bulky, and they can all survive at least one attack. That's where Eevee's other moves come in. Sizzly Slide will burn Wheezing to reduce the threat of it using Explosion. The new Fairy-type move, Sparkly Swirl, will do almost no damage, but will cure the poison that Koga loves to inflict. And Bouncy Bubble is, as always, good for keeping Eevee's HP high. Koga loves to be annoying with Protect Stall, but with smart use of Eevee's moves, he can be outlasted. It's a pretty fun battle, actually. What's not fun is the Gauntlet of Trainers in Sylph Company, which is where we're headed next. Blue does not live up to his reputation inside, with both of his Pokemon being easy 2-hit KOs. At least he accomplishes his goal of proving that you're ready for the Rockets, I guess. The rival battle here from the old games is replaced with a double battle where you team up against Archer and a Grunt. Like the first Archer battle, it's not even really worth commenting on. Not even Electrode using Self-Destruct is a serious threat. There's one more battle against Jessie and James as well, but their Pokemon have not been keeping up with Eevee's level at all. Glitzy Glow is now a one-hit KO on both of them. Giovanni's at the end of this sequence of unremarkable battles, and while his Persian can still survive one hit, it can't outspeed Eevee anymore. Rhyhorn and Nidoqueen can't stand up to Bouncy Bubble either, so unless you get really unlucky with Body Slam paralysis or something, this is another easy win. Thankfully, Sabrina's here to ensure that our time in Saffron isn't a complete joke. I thought about using Eevee's Dark-type move here, but it turns out that Baddie Bad is as, well, bad as its name suggests, hitting her Psychic types on their higher special defense, and also setting up Reflect, which is useless in this battle. Instead, I broke out Sappy Seed, a physical grass move with a Leech Seed side effect. It two-shots Mr. Mime unless it sets up Reflect. Slowbro is a 3-hit KO with either Sappy Seed or Buzzy Buzz, and while I got lucky with paralysis on its first turn, it then hit me with Yawn, allowing Jinx to come in and get a few solid hits off with Psychic before I could take it out with a Sizzly Slide. Alakazam is a 2-hit KO with either physical move, and while it also got a Psychic off, Eevee's solid defenses and level lead allowed it to survive. That level lead is going to start narrowing, however, because most of the game's trainers are behind us now. That doesn't come into play much against either of the remaining gym leaders, however, as Blaine and Giovanni's teams are both weak to Bouncy Bubble. Even though they can hit pretty hard with moves like Flare Blitz and Earthquake, Eevee can just heal off the damage it takes. Following that, it's time for one more rival battle. This is the first fight against him since Lavender Tower, but has his team improved at all? Pidgeot, Vileplume, and Marowak can all survive one hit, but there's not much these three can do that can't be rectified with Eevee using Marowak as an HP battery with Bouncy Bubble. Disappointingly, the rival's Raichu is still outsped and one-shot with Dig. One trek through Victory Road and the game's final set of trainers, and we're ready to take on the Elite Four. Minus a handful of interesting gym battles, it's been pretty smooth sailing so far, but I was still a bit worried, for two reasons. One is that Eevee was only level 63 coming out of Victory Road, only around 10 levels or so above the teams it's about to face. The other, bigger problem is its move pool. As we've seen, Eevee does so well in large part because it has super effective coverage options for almost every battle. There's no switching between tutor moves in between Elite Four fights, however. I can overwrite them with TM moves between battles, but that's it. I had to choose Eevee's moveset going in very carefully, and it took some trial and error to work out the best options. I ended up going with Sizzly Slide, Bouncy Bubble, Sappy Seed, and Freezy Frost. Several of those may seem redundant with one another, but just trust me on this one. I've stalled long enough, so let's get into the Elite Four. Lorelei is a fairly easy opener. Sappy Seed takes care of most of her Pokemon in 2 or 3 hits, and the healing from Leech Seed will help with the damage Eevee takes in the meantime. Jinx is a one-shot with Sizzly Slide, which is literally the only reason I had that move equipped, since I'm going to replace it with the TM in the next battle. But Jinx can cause problems with Lovely Kiss, so it's important to take it out quickly. This is also a good time to talk about the friendship mechanic of the Let's Go games. Unlike in some games like Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet, getting high friendship with your Pokemon is almost unavoidable here, and that's relevant because of its impact on battle. For example, at max friendship, attacks against the Pokemon have minus 10% accuracy, as seen here with Cloyster's Hydro Pump. It has other effects that I'll bring up later, but I felt I should mention it because it's another uncontrollable luck factor of these games, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Maybe that extra Hydro Pump would have been enough after Lapras's Blizzard and Slowbro's Psychic to knock me out, but I'm not going to complain. RNG is just a part of Pokemon. Lorelei wasn't my main concern, though. In most runs, Bruno is the easiest of the Kanto Elite Four by a significant margin, but he's a fighting-type trainer, and I'm using an Eevee. This is one of the only times where Eevee's normal typing is relevant, and it's a pretty big disadvantage. So big, in fact, that I had to resort to stalling tactics to get through the battle. Bruno is nice enough to lead with his worst Pokemon, Onix. Right away, I set up a substitute, the TM for which you can get from the copycat in Saffron in this game. Onix leads with Earthquake, which doesn't break the substitute because its attack is terrible, and I can then use Bouncy Bubble to knock out Onix and get all my health back. Poliwrath is 2-hit KO'd by Sappy Seed, and the substitute is absolutely necessary here, because it uses Bruno's most dangerous move, Superpower. It's a 120 base power fighting move, and Eevee cannot survive one of these. Fortunately, it gets weaker every time it's used because it lowers the user's attack, but my substitute is gone, and Bruno has 3 Pokemon left. Machamp also uses Superpower, so I have to keep setting up substitutes hoping for a friendship-based miss. I don't get one though, and after 2 Superpowers I go for Bouncy Bubble to get some HP back. I then get that miss I was looking for. Don't know if it would have knocked me out after 2 attack drops, and go for Sappy Seed this time, which does significantly more damage. After another friendship miss, I try to set up another substitute, but it gets broken immediately. Machamp then faints due to Leech Seed, but I still don't have a substitute up. I get a friendship-boosted crit Bouncy Bubble, which probably matters since Hitmonlee does a ton of damage with Brick Break, and after that, Sappy Seed finishes it off. Hitmonchan has no fighting moves, just the elemental punches, so I whittle it down with Bouncy Bubble until I feel like it's in range for Sappy Seed to finish it off. That was a really lucky fight, and there's a bunch of ways that it could have gone wrong, but we're ready to move on. Agatha, however, isn't much better. Glitzy Glow would be nice here, both for super effective damage and for light screen, but I didn't have room for it. I have Dig again, but it's not a one-hit KO on any of her Pokemon, so I had to play carefully. The winning battle doesn't start off great. Arbok paralyzes me, and I'm fully paralyzed the next turn, and while I take it out with Bouncy Bubble, that's not looking good. But then Eevee cures its own paralysis with Friendship. There's a 20% chance that can happen. That's okay though, because Agatha has plenty more status moves where that came from. Her first Gengar burns me with Will-O-Wisp, although it still falls to Dig and Bouncy Bubble. I can't use Dig against Weezing with my lowered attack, so I stick to Bouncy Bubble to stall it out. It's only a 3-hit KO thanks to a Friendship crit, and Eevee cures its own burn just in time to knock Weezing out. Go power of Friendship! This Gengar doesn't have any status moves, so I lead with Bouncy Bubble and then finish with Dig. It's only Golbat left, but I have almost no health. Bouncy Bubble restores just enough HP to outlast it though, and its air slash fortunately never crits. That was painful. I wouldn't say that Lance is easy by comparison, but he is less luck-based. I taught Reflect from the department store for this fight, which is essential for dealing with Lance's hard-hitting physical attackers. Seadra isn't one of those, and Sappy Seed takes care of it while also giving me the opportunity to set up. In case you thought all those friendship crits were unfair, don't worry. Lance gets a crit Hydro Pump off on me. Aerodactyl is up next, and it's the rare Pokemon outspeeding Eevee at this point. But with Reflect up, it won't use its stab, flinch-causing Rock Slide, but instead a weak Earthquake, and a surprisingly not that scary Hyper Beam. Bouncy Bubble 2-hit KOs it, while getting Eevee back up to about 75% health for Gyarados. I wish I had Buzzy Buzz right about now, but Hyper Beam misses thanks to Friendship, and Sappy Seed gradually wears it down. My Reflect fades, and I set it up again, and you can immediately see why, as Gyarados switches to Waterfall, and deals almost no damage. I get another lucky miss before I finish it off, although that one doesn't matter much, because up next is Helpful HP Battery Charizard. It goes for Dragon Pulse instead of Stab Air Slash or Hyper Beam for some reason, not that it matters because I avoid it with the power of Friendship anyway, allowing me to be at full health for Lance's final Pokemon. That's really important, because Dragonite's Outrage takes out half my health in a single hit now that Reflect has faded again. I brought Freezy Frost into the Elite Four almost entirely because of this one Pokemon, because it has to go down in 2 hits, and there's no other way Eevee is doing that. Still, overall, Lance is the second easiest of the Elite Four after Lorelei, and the fight against him is another one where Eevee gets to show off its versatility. That's always cool. We're not quite done yet, of course, because there's one more fight against the rival, and this time he's packing a Mega Evolution. There's no way to sugarcoat this. Soloing him with Eevee relies a lot on the power of Friendship. Most of his team hits hard, and nothing is a one-shot. I suppose that's fitting, though, that Friendship is what carries us through to victory. Mega Pidgeot outspeeds and likes to use Air Slash, so you have to hope it doesn't crit, or you get a lucky miss. Freezy Frost 2-hit KOs it, and does the same to Vileplume, which is the rival's least dangerous Pokemon, as it likes to waste a turn charging up Solar Beam. Marowak is good for healing, and its non-stab Brick Break doesn't hit very hard. The same is true for Rapidash and its Flare Blitz, as long as you don't get unlucky with a burn. He'll send out Raichu next, which isn't a one-shot with Dig this time. Because of that, I opt to use Bouncy Bubble first for some more healing. Good thing I did, too, because it lands a Thunder that gets me down almost to half health before I can knock it out. That just leaves Slowbro, and I dodge its Surf and its Psychic thanks to Friendship, allowing me to finish it off with Sappy Seed. Again, not complaining about that. This battle was a mixture of good and bad luck, and that's just what it comes down to when trying to beat the game like this. So, there you have it. That's Let's Go Eevee, soloed with an Eevee. I'm not going to pretend that this run was super difficult, but I did struggle in places, and several of those last fights came down to getting good luck. Of course, you don't get a choice of starter in this version, but I do have a copy of Let's Go Pikachu available as well. Let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see me tackle this run with Pikachu. I have a feeling that it would be a good bit tougher. Pikachu's defenses are lower, its ground weakness is more common, and it doesn't get anywhere near as many useful tutor moves. I'm willing to try it out though, if there's enough interest. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. Au revoir!